I can never stick to anything. I know I should focus on one thing, but which one? I lose interest in things I thought would interest me forever. I get bored as soon as I know how to do something. I can't stand to do anything twice. I keep changing my mind about what I want to do and end up doing nothing. If you've ever said these things to yourself, chances are good that you are a scanner, a very special kind of thinker. Unlike those people who seem to find and be satisfied with one area of interest, you're genetically wired to be interested in many things. And that's exactly what you've been trying to do. Because your behavior is unfamiliar, even unsettling to the people around you, you've been taught that you are doing something wrong and you must try to change. But what you've been told is a mistake. You have been misdiagnosed. You're a different creature altogether. Hello creative buddies, I'm Darya, textile and surface pattern designer and artist, both traditional and digital. On this channel we talk all things textile, pattern, color and artwork. So in one of my previous videos about niching down as an artist, I mentioned a book about scanner personality types. The book is called Refuse to Choose by Barbara Sher. I asked if you guys were interested in a separate video about it. Some said yes, most people didn't say anything, assuming that I would make it anyway. So I pulled out the book and decided to look through it and see if I should indeed make a video on it. And I spent 2 days reading it very closely, and I must admit it is not often that I get that deep into a book. I usually sort of skim through books. I remembered my entire life and how I was switching jobs and juggling hobbies, and I always felt guilty that I couldn't settle, especially with jobs. Several times I had really nice jobs and I was supposed to be happy by the criteria of most people around me, but I wasn't. So the more I was reading, the more I was convinced that I must make the video, because it's my responsibility to share this nugget with you. I also think I'm going to start a new series, and I'll add a new playlist called The Bookshelf or something like this, where I will share my favorite books on art, creative business, motivation, and so on. Let me know how it sounds. And I'm actually very picky about my books, my music, my movies and everything, so there are definitely not going to be too many videos on that playlist. What is the book about? So it's about people who have trouble picking only one occupation, one hobby, one job, one niche, and so on. These people often say, "Oh, I want to do everything." Just to give you a little background on myself, as you know, the guinea pig, the example. The obvious one that I previously mentioned is I cannot imagine doing only one kind of art or designs. Also, even beyond art, ever since I started working in my senior college years, I always lasted some time at a job, usually around 3 years, and then I just lost interest in it and had to move on. Of course, I'm speeding it up considerably, right? It doesn't happen like this. Usually like, I don't think I want to do this another 5 years and so on. So that happened to the point when I even, ended up going back to college again to study textile design here in the Boston area. And at the time, it wasn't my only thought. I was considering different paths. I wanted to be a hairdresser, an esthetician, an illustrator, a fashion designer, and so on. My first degree is in linguistics, and on top of that, I have worked as a manicurist, administrative assistant, English teacher and tutor for kids and for adults, front desk manager at dental offices. My hobbies also include all sorts of art making that I decided to turn into a career later, weightlifting, which I have been doing for a decade now. I did boxing at some point. I've tried other forms of fitness like Pilates and running and yoga and whatnot. Of course, not all of my life and career paths have been my choice. It was a string of life circumstances. We moved to the States. Sometimes it was jobs that were available, like the dental office. I never thought I would work in a dental office, but I ended up working at 2. It was my first job in the United States. But even, regardless of all that, with every new job, I study the field deep, and I'm always curious to learn the job in and out. Even if I didn't want to be a dental receptionist, I ended up being a really good one. So I'm still pretty decent at dental insurances, Hopefully I won't have to do it again, but who knows. Last year I started modeling and commercial acting. I think it was actually almost 2 years ago. I didn't succeed much, but at least, it's been my dream since teenage years and I gave it a try. I'm also an intermediate level gardener. I've written and translated poetry. I've voiced over videos in clinical psychology and translated them. And why am I telling you all this? Because to many people it seems like, one, I have weird disconnected hobbies and things that I do. And two, people often tell me that I inspire them because if I get interested in something, I just start doing it, I pursue it, I go deep into an interest. And like I mentioned, I often feel guilty because I don't like a job anymore, or I move on from a hobby where I bought a lot of supplies and now they're just sitting there. I also take thousands of photos as references for art and design making, and in many cases I never get back to them. I just take photos of beautiful things with no, intention of using them, and I can barely tolerate boredom. And the book author Barbara Sher states that it's very characteristic of scanners. That's one of the reasons I like switching it up and dislike working in one art style. So I am one of the 9 types of what Barbara calls scanners. Barbara was a writer who lived in New York City and unfortunately passed away in 2020. But we have her legacy, and the best thing we can do is to remember her by discussing her book, which is only one of the series. She wrote several books about multi-creatives. If you are, for whatever reason, still not subscribed, please take a second to do so and like this video if the topic sounds interesting to you. So the most important thing I like about this book is that it teaches us nothing is wrong with having multiple interests, because very often such people are viewed as superficial and almost childish, and the only proper way of functioning is by focusing on one sphere in your life. If you're happy that way, good for you, but what if you're not? Barbara says you don't have to choose among all your interests. You can practice them all. And that's the second part that I really like, that she gives practical advice on how to organize your life, depending on the type of scanner you are. And she even gives us lots of job options for this kind of people. One thing common about all scanner types is they really love learning. But scanners are often convinced that only one option is possible, and it's an either-or thinking pattern. Either you turn your passions into a job, or it's not worth doing it at all. Either you practice all your interests or none at all. And there are lots of versions in between, actually. First, not every passion has to become a job. That's very important. You can still do your favorite things. They don't have to become your job. But that's not all. One of my favorite chapters in the book is called Durations, Rewards, and Honeybees. Barbara uses the analogy of a honeybee that travels from the flower to flower collecting nectar. Let me read a little bit from the book for you. Whenever people complain that they lack focus, lose interest too easily, can't find their passion, or can't make up their minds about what they want to do, I ask them to consider the honeybee. I'm pretty sure no one in his right mind would ever accuse a bee of lacking focus or losing interest too easily. No one says bees can't make up their minds which flower they want to be involved with, or accuses them of being unable to settle on their true passion. We assume that when a bee leaves a flower, it's got a compelling reason to do so. Plain and simple, whether it stays at a flower for 2 seconds or 20 seconds, we understand it needs that amount of time to get what it came for, its reward. And the time required is its duration. When it comes to passion, I think we'd all agree that a bee seems very dedicated to its task, but it's not passionate about any one flower, it's passionate about gathering nectar. However, as a culture, we are not in the habit of thinking about scanners the same way. We simply assume that a scanner has a problem if he doesn't stay at one interest as long as we believe he should stay, usually for his whole adult lifetime, or at least until the job is finished. But if we don't know why the scanner is involved with a subject, that is, what kind of nectar he's after, we really have no way of knowing what his duration is, so we don't know when he's finished. So our rewards, things that drive us in our interests and make us move away from them once we've collected the rewards, can be such things as helping other people with something, or pure excellence, meaning that you like to get really good at something, or discovery of new things, experiencing new places, new people, Let's look at a list of possible rewards. I think it's a really cool chapter. Knowing how to do lots of things so I can always jump in and help makes me feel capable. Insights, revelations, discoveries, glimpses that make me say, I never knew that. Anything new, people, places, experiences. Having impact, being seen, like teachers, performers, ministers, gurus, politicians. Exercising intelligence because it feels good. Sensation, hearing, moving, smelling, seeing, touching. Using all parts of myself, my logic, my intuition, my empathy, my abilities. Challenging myself, testing my limits, seeing how good I can be. Studying anything, like how to make sushi, how to sing medieval songs. Creating something that didn't exist before. Creating solutions to problems. Vision, imagining possibilities, building prototypes, getting things planned. Beauty, making things beautiful, having beauty around me, recognizing beauty where it's not obvious, very relevant for artists, right? Building expertise, a reputation, a body of work. Belonging, finding a community where I can be myself, be part of something I admire. Discovering what's going on, how things run, what's behind the surface. Pulling together the big picture. Leaving nothing out, seeing relationships between things, saving the day, being competent and stepping in to fix things other people don't know how to fix. Helping others with my skills or knowledge. Learning by doing, for example, how a carpenter builds a table, how to make maple syrup, how to speak a few words of a language that's nothing like my own. I think it's a really interesting list to explore your internal motivation in everything you do. It also explains why you keep moving from one interest to another, and I think it helps you feel less guilt while doing it. What about durations? So this is about how long you should spend on an interest, and the answer is parallel to the honeybee nectar collecting process, as much as you need to until you collect your reward and are ready to move on to something new. Barbara offers a variety of tools for scanners. Let's go over them briefly. First, the Scanner Daybook. It's simply a notebook devoted to everything you do every day, a place to write down all your ideas without judging them or committing to them. For example, you think about, what about singing lessons? I think I would really love that. So in your notebook, you can speculate on it, what kind of lessons you would like to take, maybe look up some addresses and telephones, where to take the lessons. You're just giving yourself space and permission to think about your ideas, and there is no pressure to return to them unless you want to. Barbara also suggests some ideas on how to connect different ideas to one another. She has like this specific drawing pattern, but I think you can modify this and use your notebook however it works best for you. I'm actually doing this independently from the book. I realized I started doing it way before I read the book, but in a nutshell, I have a notebook where I write all my ideas, plans and thoughts, all related to pattern talent, to painting, my art business. So other tools for scanners include Scanner Planner, which is, a planner where you plan your day, your month, your year. What I have done so far list, I think, is a great thing to do for everybody. Like I said, when I started rereading this book, I was like, this is what I did, 15 years ago. All my jobs that I have done, all my paths, twists and turns, where your destiny placed you and where you ended up. Wall calendar poster with sticky notes. I know many creatives love sticky notes, and you can use them in a lot of ways to organize your day, your year. The setup and avocation station are kind of similar to me. So the idea is, she gives this example of a man who painted during commercial breaks. He had a large family and, he never had the time to paint. So the setup for him would be an easel in the corner of the living room. So he would literally run, during the commercial break where they were watching a movie, on a family movie night. He would go on a commercial break to his avocation station / the setup, paint something really quickly. Or avocation station can be a place where, for example, you are learning oil painting and you have everything ready for you. You don't have to run and, look for your materials. You have this corner in your studio or in your room, in your kitchen, where everything is ready for you to practice your hobby or your occupation. The next tool is Life Design Model, which is an interesting concept as well. And this is basically the way you can live your life. For example, telecommuting would be a life design model, working remotely. The book was written in 2006, so telecommuting was like very exotic at the time. It wasn't as common as now, after the COVID pandemic. Another life design model would be, for example, teacher's life design model. Summer's off, right? So you basically work 9 months, 3 months you're off. And there are other life design models. I will be mentioning them throughout this video as well. The next tool is your life's work bookshelf and the scanner's finish. So your life's work bookshelf is literally or metaphorically a bookshelf where you can place your projects that you have done, finished or unfinished. And that would be the scanner's finish, where essentially, for example, you are working on a project, you are doing an acrylic painting, let's say, and at some point you feel like you are done with this painting because you've collected your reward. Maybe you wanted to try, how it feels to mix up acrylic paint, and you've already done that and your brain is satisfied, but that acrylic painting is sitting on your desk and you are scolding yourself because you're not finishing it. So your scanner's finish would be to put this painting, maybe even wrap it, maybe put a ribbon on it and put it on your life's work bookshelf where you're like, I've done acrylic painting. The next one is, Barbara mentions it quite often, is called a good enough job, which means when you're a person with a lot of interests, you need a job, right? You need to live off of something. So the good enough job is ideally a job that pays well and leaves you enough energy to practice your interests. It works in many cases, works for many scanner personality types. Barbara also speculates on lots of assumptions, inner conflicts, and real problems, such as I'm afraid to commit to anything, or I have to turn my passion into a career, otherwise it's not worth it, or I can't get started with a project, or I'm too busy because I have small children and lots of commitments. So she gives tips in the book on how to unravel, first and foremost, how busy you actually are, and debunk the either or thinking pattern. Let's look at what I think is one of the most fun parts of the book, the 9 types of scanners and which tools work for them. Of course, it's a big book and I will try to do my best to summarize it. I'm not going to be reading long passages. So if you really like the idea of the book, I suggest that you find it, and there are a lot of great things that I won't be able to mention in this video, but okay, let's do this. So there are 9 types of scanners, and it's definitely not easy to place yourself into one category straight away or into several categories. You're like, maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that. So Barbara also says she's never met a scanner who's only a single type. I'll go over them one by one, but let me read them out first. The first one is called double agent, Cibo, like the name, plate spinner, serial specialist, serial master, jack of all trades, wanderer, sampler, and high-speed indecisive. Let's go over them one by one. A double agent is someone who is torn between 2 lives or 2 careers. It often involves some kind of travel as well. The example from the book is about a woman who has elderly parents she needs to take care of, but she also dreams of living in Africa. So the suggestion for people like this is to telecommute or work from home roughly, right? Work remotely. And remember, the book was written in 2006, so that was very progressive thinking and quite unusual for most people at the time. Another option is to have contract or temporary jobs or take highly paid short-term work to pay for the whole year. For example, as a tax accountant or working on a fishing boat that go to the ocean for like weeks. I've actually heard of something very similar from one of the artists whose painting workshop I took. So he usually teaches those workshops in summer, in nice weather, makes the money enough to live in winter for his family. And in winter, he basically has no income, but he's producing studio artwork that he will sell later on, hopefully. And actually, from what I understood about fine artists, if I got it right, that selling artwork is kind of a big deal for everybody. A sale, it doesn't happen like every day, all day. Maybe maybe for most famous artists, for the big ones. I know some of these sound unrealistic, but what I like about this book is that it's eye-opening on the fact that there are alternatives to the traditional 9 to 5, which I'm personally used to and is actually my least favorite way of working. It was a necessity at different points in my life, but usually those times were the saddest and hardest, and I'm only realizing it now. I've had part-time jobs as well. They were less prestigious, so to say, in the eyes of people, but the work-life balance was much better with part-time jobs, and it's particularly important when your kids are small, for example. There is more info on the double agents in the book, but I will move on to the second type, which is the largest group of the cyclical kind of scanners, and is called Cibo. I don't know why she used this name. I found no explanation in the book, but it is what it is. So cyclical means that you keep getting back to the same interests rather than finding new ones every time. I'm going to read a little from the book. If you're a Cibo, you represent the largest group of cyclical scanners. You return to the same group of interests over and over, and each time you find them fresh and appealing. You're happy to try new things too, but you really prefer to revisit what you already love. If you're a typical Cibo, you're usually surrounded by lots of creative clutter. Cibo types can't always find their materials because they have so many projects going on at the same time. They can't keep track of them. All the same, most Cibo scanners have very little tolerance for chaos and have bursts of organizing energy they find very satisfying. But order never lasts for long because when the creative urge comes, there is no patience for putting things away. Like most scanners, you're talented in many areas, and when you're using any of your talents, you're as happy as a child in a toy store. The lack of goals is a problem for you, however, because you're always starting over. You don't usually get very far with any of your projects, and down deep, you long to have something to show for all the hours you spend with your interests. You wish you could present the world with a finished product or be an authority in one of your areas of interest. You've tried narrowing down your interests so you'd be able to go deeply into one of them at a time, hoping that would let you make some headway, but when you try to do that, you always feel stifled and like you're missing out on other more interesting things. So for this type of scanners, Barbara suggests the school day life design model. When, for example, on Monday you do textile design, on Tuesday you paint, on Wednesday you have ballroom dancing, and so on. Or even take it further and divide your day into lessons, so to say. For example, 8 to 10 you work on vector designs, 10 to 12 you work on watercolor painting, and so on. If your life permits it, of course. It's just an example. The book doesn't suppose people don't have jobs, quite on the contrary. Of course you need a planner to schedule your days and weeks, and she calls it the scanner planner. I think it also goes in line with a different technique called the 12-week year. It's from a different book by Brian Moran, and the idea is doing a 12-week block on a project. For example, you work on your website for 12 weeks and then switch to a different project. I'm describing it very roughly, of course. There is another subclass of Cibo described here that I felt really connected to. It described a woman who was a poet and a painter who also did pottery and other things, and she was saying that she was quickly losing interest in every hobby or activity she was involved in. Barbara calls it random acts of passion design model, sort of when the inspiration strikes, you do the thing, and then you're ready to move on until the next bout of this particular inspiration. I definitely recognize myself in this. It happens to me because, for example, I start painting with gouache. I'll do maximum of 3-5 paintings, and then I'm bored and I want to do vector art. But I do come back to gouache from time to time and sort of add up to the existing collection. So I have several collections running at the same time. So for folks like this, Barbara recommends either setting some goals in numbers, for example, to paint 50 pieces by the end of the year, or to schedule an event that will hold you accountable, for example, an art show or a party with your art buddies where you will share what you've made in this period. Another recommendation is rotating priorities board, where you can use, for instance, a 15-month calendar to plan what you're working on. Also goes in line with a 12-week year, right? A vacation station is another useful tool when you set everything up for you to do something quickly, like with that example, making art during commercial breaks. Apart from the school day life design model, there's also the physician life design model. A physician, for example, might see patients on Tuesday, go to hospital on Wednesday and Thursday, and so on. And that's, kind of what I described, right? Another useful tool for Cibo's is using 20 or 30 of ring binders, something like this, where you can store your ideas, right? This is a small one. They're usually larger, where you can put in different clippings and write something. It can, if it's a 3D project, it can also be boxes that you use. Reading the examples from the book made me realize that, first of all, I don't have that many interests actually. And secondly, I wanted to say that while binders can work too, you can also use digital tools. I personally organize my projects in different ways, such as I use the Evernote app on my phone and on my computer, where I save reference photos and screenshots. I also have photos on my computer with, painting references and different photos. You can use Pinterest as well. I'm an Instagram girl. I save a lot of references on Instagram folders. I think it's just really important to set up some kind of system as early as possible and then just add up to it. Otherwise, it can get messy. For example, I recently started a new account for my painting, and I realized that, all these years I've been doing textile design and, commercial art. I completely neglected my painting, fine art, and many things are unscanned. Most of them are somewhere in sketchbook, so I'm slowly organizing it and sharing things now anew. I scan the painting, I write, the size, the medium, the date, the approximate date, and I post it on my new painting account. Of course, I'm not perfect, and I do have plenty of unorganized screenshots on my phone and so on. But overall, it's really important to take some time to organize things from time to time. Same with storage space, right? You need to move things from your phone. Career options that Barbara suggests for Cibo's, which all sort of kind of make sense in my life personally, would be multiple income streams, the good enough job that I mentioned, right? A home business, umbrella careers, the careers that unite your interests under one umbrella, so to say, and consultant. If you find a job as a consultant in a field that interests you, such as animals or musical theater, for instance, you can build expertise and eventually command respect in that field. So, I don't know, I'm not sure exactly how consultant jobs work, but it sounds interesting. I think it's so crazy that I've been living my life, resolving things somehow, organizing things in my ways, and then I open a book and read about myself and my life, right? Doesn't it feel nice to know you're not the only crazy one? The next scanner type is the plate spinner. From what I understood, this type is very much about helping people out. It's about very active individuals who enjoy doing multiple projects at the same time, who react fast and are problem solvers. They are great at troubleshooting, but their issue is that they rarely have time for themselves, and they also often lose interest in things after they figure out how it works. That's my husband. He often says that. Like, he'll build something and then he's like, I know how it's done, I'm not interested anymore. So for this type of scanners, Barbara recommends the LTTL system, learn, try, teach, and live method of project management, where you could teach other teachers, for example. The next big group of scanners is sequential scanners, who do not return to their interests over and over. Life is too short to do anything twice is their motto. The first subclass in this group is serial specialist, and the next one is serial master. And I'm announcing them together because they sound very similar in a lot of ways. They both reflect the ability to pursue something so seriously that it is a full-fledged career. But from what I understood, serial master is someone who is absolutely top-level guru in a field. The serial specialist is milder. Let me read you some questions, the affirmative answer to which indicates you might be a serial specialist. Are you a serial specialist? Does your work record look like it should belong to more than one person because you've changed direction so often? Do you immerse yourself deeply in a project or job for so long it looks to others like a permanent life choice? Do you find that once you get the hang of what you're doing, you're ready to leave and start somewhere else? Do you love exploring the culture inside a corporation, a hospital, a film, a production house, a Wall Street financial firm? If you've answered yes to those questions, you are a serial specialist. On the surface, you don't appear to be a scanner at all because you commit completely to a field without any apparent problem and stay involved for years. exactly like a specialist. But then, often at the top of your game, you quit and start something new. That's so me. Your family wonders if you are self-sabotaging or afraid of success, but being a true scanner, you know that life is too short to do only one thing forever. Serial specialists often excel at whatever field they're in. It never occurs to your co-workers or bosses that you're only exploring. I would also add that it never occurs to yourself as well. You don't really think about it that way. What are you looking for? Not the right career, that's for sure. One career will never be enough for you. You're after something more elusive and almost impossible for the people around you to understand. And that elusive thing, the reward, is the learning itself and the newness, the new experience. So the difference between serial specialists and serial masters is that specialists pursue the experience. For example, after working in finance, they decide they want to teach English abroad. So their scanner's reward is newness and discovery. While serial masters pursue excellence. They need to be the best of the best in their field. They often want to push the limits and see how far they can go, how good they can get. They often set challenges for themselves. The recommendation for serial specialists is to find an umbrella career, one that unites their interests and uses their talents. For example, a historian, a public speaker, a journalist, a researcher, a documentary film producer, because, for example, you can make documentaries about all different fields you're interested in. You can also be a business owner, a consultant, or a personal assistant. I would personally also add the modern blogger to it, because you can make videos about your interests and things that you do. You can have a blog, lots of variations. I believe I do belong to this type of scanners as well. As every new career I took on, I was 100% invested in and took it very seriously. I was a good teacher, from the words of my students. I was starting to make progress as an in-house textile designer when I left and started a small business, which is very logical too. And I left because, there are many reasons, but I was also bored doing the same thing every year, every season. I was a good nail technician back in the day, a front desk manager, and so on. But every time I got good at something, I left. I didn't do it on purpose. I just realized it, retrospectively. I left because I was bored and I thought I could do more. I want to expand. For the serial master, the similar type, Barbara recommends basically being a guru. She writes it like that. So they can be talent agents, life coaches, motivational speakers, and teachers. The next kind of scanner is jack of all trades, which I also strongly relate to. And first of all, because of their reward, but more on it in a minute. Jacks of all trades are good at just about everything they do. They have several degrees and certificates, but actually what they truly want and what their reward is just to be happy. To be happy on a daily basis, spend time with good people, have easy and pleasant relationships at work, spend time with family, and so on. But because they are so good at several or many things, they keep turning them into jobs. And then in time, jobs get boring or uncomfortable for some reasons, and they move on to search for happiness in the new places and vocations. Barbara gives an example of a man who was in business school and taught English and so on, but in the end, he found true happiness when his wife and he had a baby. Fields and professions are not important to jacks at all. They are looking for happiness. And if you watch some of my videos, you might have noticed I use the word happy quite a lot. Do what brings you joy, make art that makes you happy, and so on. Making people happy. Brains have so much capacity to bring joy. So I'm very happy that Spoonflower team are managing it. We want our buyers to be happy with their purchased fabrics. What works best and brings you the most joy? Create what you enjoy. And that was also my pattern of thinking. When I was working in-house, I thought, okay, let's imagine I build a career here. What is the path for the designer, right? Junior designer, senior designer, design manager, and then you become, the bigger and bigger manager of a small area, manager of a big area, district manager, and so on. And I'm like, man, this is so boring. And the bigger manager you become, the less design you do. you start doing business things, not design. And what kind of happiness are we talking about? But again, everybody has their different reward. For some people, the reward is the career advancement, having a title, having their own room in the office, going on business trips. That is not my reward. I've been on business trips, I've worked in corporations, and I realized that's not what makes me happy. What makes me happy, since we started talking about this, is the creative freedom, is the ability to choose when to work, how much to work, what kind of art to make. But that's a different story. So for this kind of scanners, Barbara suggests the good life model, which is before venturing on something, whatever comes your way, ask yourself, is this going to make me happy? To quote from the book, having good days with good people is what jack of all trades really wants. Careers for them can be contract work, multiple income streams, telecommuter, editor, written translations, troubleshooter, I don't know what kind of job that is, the good enough job. And I've done all of this, I think, except for, troubleshooter. Interesting how it all aligns, right? It kind of makes sense. Like the person who doesn't know me obviously wrote a book that describes a big part of my life. The next, seventh type of 9 is the wanderer. Let's look at some questions that can help you determine if you're a wanderer. Are you a wanderer? Have you always gotten interested in unrelated activities for no apparent reason? Are you intrigued by things that people around you find boring? I actually am. Do you like trying on new jobs and lifestyles? Do you love adventure and new experiences, people, places, sensations? I do. Do you lack a sense of direction in your life and see only the next move? Do you wish you had a map and destination? The wanderer is a great lover of random experience and allows herself to move toward whatever looks attractive and give it a try. Unlike the jack of all trades, she doesn't have a plan and doesn't want one. Wanderers are never at an event for a specific purpose. They only know it's fascinating. The wanderer keeps an open mind and isn't confused by labels. If you're a wanderer, you've never had the same concerns of many people who struggle to understand how they can use their interests to create professions for themselves. You've never asked yourself questions like, what do you call someone who likes animals, or someone who explains things well, or someone who's a good organizer? Is this a career? Is it a hobby? What do you call a person who just likes to talk to people? Is that a therapist? Are such skills even remotely relevant to any job search? As a wanderer, you never have these thoughts. You appreciate experience for its own sake. As a result, you can see opportunities where others see nothing. But wanderers do need to find an underlying theme for their seemingly random interests, or eventually they become concerned. The reward and the thing that drives them is the love of adventure or a fascination for the unknown. Barbara compares them with Odysseus, who was going home in tangled ways. Until wanderers find where they belong, some ways to make a career for them are multiple income streams and expertise for sale. As for the tools, she suggests making the everything I do not want list, which could describe all the careers you do not want for yourself, hobbies you have no interest in trying, and so on. I think it's a great tool for any scanner to use, to write what you are not, so you can see better what you are and what sort of art you enjoy making it, bringing it to our context. It can also be a different way of approaching finding your art style, for example. The next scanner type is a sampler. Are you a sampler? Have you ever thought you wanted to experience just about everything? If you had your way, would you never do anything twice? Does the idea of being an expert sound narrow and boring to you? Do you prefer to learn by doing rather than reading or hearing about something? Once you know how something is done, are you ready to move on? Do friends and family think you lack ambition? I've always thought I was weird or something. I just wanted to know. I'll look something up, research it, do it for a while, get bored with it, and want to do something else. When I was younger, my dad said I should become a professional student. I love it when I find something in which I can positively lose myself. Of course, I've never figured out what to do with all this stuff. It fascinates me, and then it's gone. Once I've done something, I don't ever want to do it again. People ask if I'm going to do one of these things for a living, but it wouldn't make sense. So what's the matter with me? I'll never have a resume I can show anyone. Every one of these comments come from a sampler. A sampler is someone who looks for a special kind of richness in their life and finds that there are very few ways to fill it. For these people, Barbara suggests a quarterly creative project life design model when you dedicate 3 months to one big project. She also says the only way to do it all is to do it small, and suggests the Everything 101 life design model, where you basically treat your interest as 101 introductory classes and then move on. Samplers like to learn by doing, and at the end of this process they usually have an object such as a woven rug or a glazed pot or an unfinished novel. They love keeping their objects they made and end up with a lot of stuff. So for them, having what Barbara calls your life's work bookshelf is super helpful and enjoyable. She also has some advice for people who complain they never finish anything, that once you've lost interest in the project, there's no use in scolding yourself for it. You just need to wrap it up and put it on your life's work bookshelf, literally or metaphorically. Put it away, get it out of sight, and calm down and live on. They can also have the annual show and tell party where they pick up a project you were once interested in and talk about it. Your guests might even want to bring their projects to share. The last type of scanners is the high-speed indecisive. Are you a high-speed indecisive? Do you love to bite off more than you can chew? Do you dislike having to finish one thing before you start another? Do you quickly grasp new ideas before others even notice them? Do you feel guilty because you drop new interests so quickly? Do you see potential where others see nothing? Do you secretly suspect you're not looking for one right thing at all? When you're forced to conform, do you feel like you've been put in a small cage where you can't stretch to your full length? I can relate to this one. I do feel like that. Do you wish you could find a career that lets you change one interest for another at least once a day? If you said yes to most of these questions, you are a high-speed indecisive, maybe the most misunderstood of all scanners. You get pulled away from your latest project sooner than other scanners, not because you've lost interest, but because you see something more fascinating. Your behavior wasn't a problem when you were young, because children often move from one activity to another in a short time. As long as you were able to get involved with each one, your parents had little cause for concern. Like children and other scanners, the high-speed indecisive is usually having a very entertaining time and typically enjoys everything she does. But when the high-speed indecisive gets older, her constant switching from one subject to another stops being accepted. Like most scanners, high speeders are sensitive to disapproval. They soon stop enjoying what is interesting and start worrying what is right. As an adult, the high speeder has stopped having fun and is trying to win respect. After all, what about a career? Where on earth will someone who swaps one interest for another a dozen times in 1 week be valued? Can there be a career out there that pays for a high speeder's talents? Many scanners have extremely fast responses. Plate spinners, for instance, the fastest of the cyclical scanners, those who return to the same interest over and over again, can move like lightning, keeping a dozen projects in play at the same time. High speeders are different. They are not usually adept at the plate spinner's gift. A high speeder's talent isn't for keeping things moving, it's for spotting gold. High-speed indecisives have a natural ability to see the potential in just about anything, but they are not good at decision-making. But it's possible to not be making decisions. Here are some ideas for this type of scanners from the book. You can switch to different subjects if you are a tour guide and take people to your favorite museums or film festivals or fashion shows, or be a researcher in a television newsroom. You could be a firefighter or assemble a catalog on colleges or anything else, toys, clothes, camping equipment. As for the tools, Barbara suggests it's compiling your own catalog of ideas with potential. And the possible careers are freelance writer, researcher in a newsroom, catalog compiler, copywriter, inventor, stockbroker, and a few others. Believe it or not, but I also recognize myself partially in this model. I remember when I was a kid, my favorite books were encyclopedias with pictures where you had a little bit about everything. Also, when I was working as an in-house designer, within my first couple months, my manager asked me to make an idea board for kids' bedding. And when she looked at what I put together, I could see she was overwhelmed because I've put so much in there. That was one of the moments when I realized that I think differently from others. I always take lots of photos and just about everything. And I have idea lists everywhere on my phone and in paper notebooks, just because I find so many things fascinating. I see beauty almost everywhere. Of course, that particular case was partially because I wasn't experienced enough and I didn't know what was okay to include in a mood board and what not. Some of the images were like low quality or something. But the point is, I see ideas in everything and everywhere. I also absolutely adore advent calendars and tiny samples of cosmetics, sweets, coffee, and so on, because I can try it really small and move on to the next exciting new flavor or taste or thing. In general, I think that in my art and design world and business, I'm a Cibo who keeps cycling through her many interests like watercolor painting, gouache painting, ink pen illustration, vector design, right? Patterns. What else do I like? Landscapes. But beyond art, in my life in general, I would call myself a serial specialist with a touch of jack of all trades, because like I mentioned, I've had different jobs, and almost every time I took it super seriously, studied things deeply, and thought this is my final destination. I still don't know where I will be in 5 or 10 years, seriously. Hopefully still in art and design, because being a small business owner gives you plenty of opportunities for variety and wearing many hats, an umbrella career, right? I do YouTube and classes and paint and vector designs and plein air, manage 2 websites and whatnot. I really love it that Barbara in this book reiterates that scanners can and must have many interests. It's almost a physical necessity for them. I'm going to read a little excerpt from the book in conclusion. Scanners are smart and multi-talented. They are divergent thinkers who don't feel Einstein's need to boil the meaning of the universe down to one formula, but, like Leonardo da Vinci, would rather expand it endlessly. Most scanners aren't as attached to stability as other people. They seem to have retained the inborn security of a young child, the same love of what's new, the drive to learn and understand everything they see. While most of us find the prospect of change disruptive, even threatening, scanners thrive on it. They don't mind being beginners as much as most adults, and while some are driven to master a subject and then move to another, others are perfectly content with a quick study, after which they too move on to another interest. When you see someone with no tolerance for boredom, who is curious about almost anything new and has the ability to constantly process fresh material, you're looking at a scanner. So what do you think of this whole concept of scanners? Can you relate to it? Or maybe you're like, what is she talking about? Comment below. What do you think of this bookshelf series that I'm starting? Would you like to see more book reviews like this one related to the art business, motivation, textile design, and so on? If you have any book suggestions, let me know below. If you like this book, you might want to buy it. It's on Amazon, and there are always lots of used books. This is a used copy. I'm a big supporter of thrifted books. My favorite sites are thriftedbooks.com and betterworldbooks.com. I also buy used books on Amazon and eBay and occasionally on other websites after I make sure they're legitimate. Also, before buying books, I always borrow them from the library first. Support your local library. And then if I really like the book, I buy it. I've bought several used books that were signed by the author. So here's a book like this. It happened to me 3 or 4 times already. I've also bought what used to be an ex-library copy with this little sticker I don't know why on this one it's, you know, in the back of the book. You know, sometimes libraries have to destroy books that, from what I understand, are not very popular, and then they either sell or donate them to book resellers, like thrifted books. They usually come from faraway lands when you buy them, like Arizona, where I imagine they have giant warehouses. And what is crazy is they have these markings of local libraries, local to me, the Boston area. Can you imagine? The book was, you know, donated, traveled to Arizona, then I bought it, it came back. That's one of the things I love most about living in the United States. You can order books from the library system via a phone app. They drive them from across the state of Massachusetts. So you order a particular book and it comes to you, comes to your local branch within several days, and you just pick it up. I love it, and we didn't have this in Belarus back in the day. I don't know if it's changed. Do you have anything like this where you live? Okay, enough book talk. If you've enjoyed this video, use the YouTube love language and give me a little like, so more textile and art buddies find us. And remember, reading is what? Fundamental. Lessons, so to say. And I always felt guilty that I couldn't settle, especially with jobs. Laughing at my own jokes. How did I get here? Alright, calm down, Beyonce.